Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the 8-Bit Adventures podcast. This is episode 310, and I'm your host, Sean Hayes, here to bring you this week's latest and greatest gaming news. So, hope you all had a great week. I know we took a week off last week as I was traveling, but yeah, we're back. And we've got some news this week. There were 2 different directs, and then there were also 2 different directs from Nintendo. So yeah. We were traveling for my nephew's birthday, and then my son went camping with my father-in-law, and he had a great time. So. And then we did sort of a walkthrough of the TV station last night, where theoretically we will be filming a new Tales of Jamora series. We're still working out the details of that. But all very exciting. I'm very tired. But yeah. And the big news this week, World of Warcraft War Within. So, and that will be our last bit of news. And I'm just gonna talk about that for a while because I've been playing. Sucked back in. So, why don't we get right into the news this week? I gotta adjust the levels on that. So, first up, GamesIndustry.biz reports that the former Star Fox developer, Argonaut Games, which shut down in 2004, is back. It has risen from the ashes now as a niche publisher, and they are working on releasing a remaster of Croc: Legend of the Gobos for PC and consoles. So I'm a sucker for these kind of stories when a developer or publisher or something goes out of business and then comes back quite a while later. If you really think about it, so 20 years, so 2004, that is GameCube, PS2, X, I think still, I think that might still, or maybe it's the 360. So GameCube. Since then, we've had the Wii, the Wii U, and the Switch. But if it were prior to, it would be essentially 4 console generations, or roughly that. If you think a console generation is, actually, if we count GameCube, Wii U, and Switch, because the GameCube wasn't really phased out until 2007. So the GameCube still had 3 years left in it. So yeah, that's a long time. And I believe the co-CEO or co-president is one of the developers who was on the dev team when they were making games back in the mid 80s. I believe Starliner was the title that he worked on. So yeah, that's nice to see. So yeah, really interested to see. I never played Croc, so I'm interested to see how the remaster looks and what the gameplay's like. My guess is it's probably like a 3D platformer collectathon, maybe. because that was big at the time. So, yeah, congrats for coming back, Argonaut. Next up, there was a D&D Direct. So from Wizards of the Coast, there was a lot of promotion for it and talking it up, and it was not. I don't think it was worth the hype, personally. Basically, it was like a 20-minute presentation. They spent like a good 15 of those minutes just talking about like more about the upcoming revised handbooks, like the core rule books, which at this point, the player's handbook like does an early release to local game stores next week. So I feel like you probably could have talked about future titles more, or at least spent more time talking about the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Monster Manual, which we have seen like almost nothing of. And those are, the Dungeon Master's Guide is like 2 months out. So, yeah. They did provide a roadmap of some of the new books through 2025. And they did show more of Project Sigil. Or, yeah, I think they're officially calling it Project Sigil. With that stupid hard G in there. And, I mean, that looks good. It has a lot of, like, dungeon building in there. I'm curious to see how it will run. I did sign up for the closed beta, I think. So, and then the ability to import your own stuff. So, like, if you don't want to pay for like the 3D minis, you can import your own tokens into it. It does look weird. You can also import your own maps. So, like, if you just want to run 2D maps with your own tokens, that is an option. But, they're also going to be selling, basically the 3D models for creatures and probably dungeon packs and things like that. I will be very curious to see if they open it up so that like you can provide, like, if people who are able to do 3D modeling, like if you can build your own terrain and then add your own textures and stuff, that would be really interesting, and I think that would be a good sell for them. But yeah, and then talking about expanding it to other rule sets, which I thought was pretty shocking. So they showed that the upcoming books will include, I don't remember the name, but I think it's just called Dragon Anthology, which is a collection of adventures that feature both Dungeons and Dragons. So, because they noted that like most players who play D&D have never encountered a dragon before. There's going to be yet another new starter set. So this is like the 3rd or 4th starter set for 5th edition. And then, much to my dismay, a player's guide to Faerun, and then a DM's guide to Faerun. I don't know about you folks. I'm kind of sick of the Forgotten Realms at this point. Like, I don't care. I'm sure it's for all the people that played Baldur's Gate 3 and they want to get into D&D. Like, here's more information about the setting. Yeah, I hot take, I think Forgotten Realms is one of the least interesting D&D settings. But, it's Eberron is not going to get the same level of love, at least from Wizards proper. But this was not part of the D&D Direct, but I follow Keith Baker, who is the creator of Eberron. But he's not affiliated with Wizards of the Coast outside of that setting. He is currently working on some of his own stuff for Eberron for the revised rule set. So it's a weird situation where, like, he basically follows the same rules that the rest of us do for creating content for Eberron. It's just that he tends to create better stuff since he originally created the setting, and so he kind of understands very, very much what it's about and like how things should progress and everything. So yeah. So Forgotten Realms books. Bleh. So ultimately, I was not super pumped for after watching the direct. I thought it was cool for the Project Sigil stuff, but ultimately there wasn't a lot in there that was very new or super exciting for me. Adventure books, whatever. I'll be interested to see, like, to hear what the feedback is regarding those adventures and whether they really utilize and capitalize on dragons and their abilities. So yeah, that is up on YouTube to go watch it. They did, like, it was a very weird, like, sort of intended to be like an inspirational piece about community and the history of the game and that stuff, because it's the 50th anniversary. So like what D&D means to people. And it was like, after a lot of the blunders of the past previous years, I mean, it felt very much like a corporate promotion. So yeah. And this is also for anyone out there who thinks that I just, shill for Wizards of the Coast. I'm not excited for a lot of stuff that they have in the roadmap. And I would have preferred to have like 20 minutes of talking about the DMG, even, since we've gotten almost nothing aside from Bastions will be in it. And a new layout. So, apparently it'll have 100 pages of magic items, which I'm like, that's okay. That's not really one of the things that's like one of the least important parts of the DMG. So, anyway, we'll quit yapping about the D&D Direct to instead talk about Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, namely the premium edition. So IGN reports that everybody's calling it the iconic look. I don't know if it's that iconic, but his sort of open ripped shirt look from Temple of Doom is available as a cosmetic skin if you buy the $100 premium edition. And I guess that's the only way to get it currently. Now, that's whatever. Warcraft does the same thing, kind of, where they put like mounts and little combat out of combat pets and stuff in collector's editions and everything. What tripped me up on this was what is included in the premium edition and for the cost, where you get the base game, which is a $70 game. Okay. So then the extra stuff, we're talking about $30. You get a story expansion. I don't know the details of the story expansion, so like I don't know how much content you're getting there. You get a digital art book, not a physical one, but a digital one. And the cosmetic skin. Without knowing what sort of content you're getting with the story expansion, I don't think this is a great value. Like, and I made the comparison when I posted the story to social media, or shared the story from IGN on social media. I made the comparison to the Unicorn Overlord Master Collection. where for I think it was around the same price. Like, number one, base game's cheaper. And then I think the Master Edition might have been like $20 more. But you got a physical copy of the game, which I don't think you're getting with this. You got a physical art book, a 2-disc soundtrack, and a full-on card game. Like a full-on deck-building card game. That plays like 2 to 4 people. Which, like, that in and of itself, like, would typically retail for like $60. Like, if it was a mass-produced card game. Basing it on like how much like Dominion costs. Which for those who don't know is another deck building card game. It was kind of a big one. It helped kind of define the deck building genre. So yeah. So when I compare the two, I'm like, one's a lot more value. But if we want to compare it to something where you only get digital rewards, I forget the Epic Edition, I think, of a World of Warcraft expansion, right? Which basically gives you all of, like, it's technically to pay for the expansion, but like you also, if you did not previously, have the game, it would also give you the game. So you get base game expansion, you get a bunch of cosmetics, you usually get a month free of game time, and some other stuff for $80. So for $20 cheaper, you also get more stuff. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's a great deal, but I'm not gonna knock it if you want to buy it for that price, but yeah. And I think this is Bethesda. So yeah, I don't know what they're doing. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents on Indiana Jones and the Great Circles Premium Edition, and it's also going to look real silly if they. So, like, number one, it's the only way to get this skin is to buy the Premium Edition, and they figure thirsty people are going to want to buy it just for the skin. But also then it's going to look silly if they later release that as an option that you can just buy for, $2 or whatever. So yeah. That's my 2 cents on that. Next up, there was both an Indie World Showcase and Nintendo, like a Nintendo Partner Direct, or a Nintendo Direct Partner Showcase. They did them back to back. They were just like, let's just do it all at once. So this, it was an okay Direct. There wasn't a lot in there that I thought was like super interesting. There was a couple of, mostly there were things where I was like, that's a really interesting art style and art direction. Like, I don't know if it's a game I would play, but like, it's got some really cool visuals in there. And then there were, a couple. Ironically, the one that I'm most excited about is Shovel Knight Shovel of Hope DX, which is just Shovel Knight again. But but Yacht Club has talked about it's basically an anniversary collection, where they also put in a bunch of new features into Shovel Knight. So, but Civ 7 coming to Switch. That was a surprise. I was not expecting that. The Castlevania Dominus collection for Castlevania fans. Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection, I think for fighting fans, like, that is big. There's also another Capcom Fighting Collection. I think the Marvel vs. Capcom one is more enticing. Just because those are great games. Rune Factory, Guardians of Azura for all the farm sim fans, for your sort of action fantasy farming sim. Which I wonder, like, because it's Rune Factory, I wonder if it does the Harvestella thing better than Harvestella. There's gonna be some Sea of Stars DLC. I know I was super excited for Sea of Stars, and then when I played through a bunch of it, and I fell off of it because it just couldn't keep my interest. But it's like a circus DLC. Tetris Forever, which is just an anniversary collection, mostly of Tetris games made by a single developer. And then ones for particularly the art style, Neva and Pizza Tower. So Neva is made by the same studio that made Grease. And it's very, very pretty. And it's a story about like overcoming sort of these terrors that are sort of infecting the forest and cleansing the forest. Pizza Tower, I have no idea. This thing looks like it has a very sort of like early to mid 90s like grungy cartoon aesthetic. Like it kind of feels like it's got some bones with like Ren and Stimpy or Rocco's Modern Life, like that sort of style to it, which I thought just was really interesting. Otherwise, it's like it almost kind of felt like it was trying to do the Sonic the Hedgehog thing of like a speed platformer, but with pizza, and you play as a pizza chef, so it's weird, man. I love to see weird games like that. So I hope it is successful enough that the studio is able to work on other projects. And like a whole bunch of DLC for Balatro, which I have seen some stuff around about it, but like not a whole bunch of information. It was like, like people are talking about it, but like it's not dominating the conversation because everybody's talking about was it Black Myth Wukong. But yeah, so Balatro is apparently a roguelike poker game. But the DLC is for like card backs and stuff of like Witcher 3, Vampire Survivors, Among Us. And there was one more. I don't remember what it is, but like it was when Vampire Survivors showed up. Like first off, when Witcher 3 was there, I thought it was going to be like, oh, is it like Gwent or something? No, it's like a cosmetic tie-in. And then Vampire Survivor showed up, and I was like, they hit the big time, folks. Oh, Dave the Diver is the other one. That's what it is. So yeah, and I love indies supporting other indies. Like I always think that's great. But the big one for me, and this is a big deal. Metal Slug Tactics. So I'm a sucker for, tactical role playing games, like tactical strategy games. And like it's got that. It looks like it has that charm. And then it looks absolutely gorgeous. With like that Metal Slug art style with the sort of pixel, like very I guess like HD pixel type thing. And it's like I don't play Metal Slug, and I might pick this game up. Like for I typically don't do like modern era like tactical strategy games, and in favor of like fantasy ones. Like I might get this because I just for the animations and the style and everything, it looks so good. So yeah, that's my reaction to the Direct and the Indie World Showcase. I thought about doing a reaction video And I got to get back into the habit of doing that, of basically just recording myself watching the videos for the first time and kind of giving my thoughts. But yeah, so if any of the and Yakuza, yeah, Yakuza coming to Switch. I think that's the name of the series. But yeah, so again, not a weird choice, but sure, bring it to Switch. There we go. So that is going to bring us to our last news topic for the day. World of Warcraft, The War Within. So formal release date was this past week. It was on Monday, which is a weird, like normally they launch expansions on Tuesdays because they do the big patch. And then or they do the big maintenance to get the patch ready, and then like once the patch is live, like go. But little bit of controversy there. Was they, as part of like the collector's edition and the epic edition and whatever they're called and stuff, they included, bundled in there, early access. So you could get in, I think it was starting Thursday or Friday. So it was basically you got like 3 days of early access. Which it's a weird case where like I don't think it's as big of a deal as the community's making it out to be. Like the community's making it out to be like the people who got early access, were able to like race to world firsts and stuff and get all this stuff, and they're going to throw the auction house economies out of whack and make so much money and this and that, and like create a bias against people who didn't get early access. I don't think that's the case. I think it's more of that, it's very much a cash grab. Like, or unless they wanted to, like unless it's a way to monetize like a rolling launch to, spread out the number of people that are logging in consecutively so that you can do server stress tests and stuff. Like, that's kind of what I feel like it was. But it's also muddled in the fact that they bundled it in with other stuff that you would just be getting. Although I think they were also selling it as a standalone for like $40. And if that's the case, where it was selling it standalone for $40, like that's a very blatant and predatory cash grab. And then there's been there was some like tuning of like damage and health for enemies and stuff, where Blizzard felt that leveling was too easy. And so they did a bunch of like emergency maintenance patches and took the game offline to correct that. So now like there's all, and this ties back into the early access, where people who got early access then like were able to just blaze their way to 80, like the new level cap, before they put these changes in to slow the pace down for everyone else. So again, little controversial there. And then like something broke with the auction house. That's the first time I've seen, at least as far as I can remember, and I might just have a faulty memory, that the auction house was like actually just taken offline. While the game was still, like, you could go in and log into the game and like do questing, do all the stuff, but like if you went to the auction house, it would say like, oh, the auction house is closed right now, and it's like, I don't know if I've ever seen that before. And I can't help but think that it's all the people like me that are running Auctionator, which is an add-on that scans the auction house to give you like prices of things. That it was all people hammering the auction house during early access. So I will say I did get to play early access because I got the Epic Edition or whatever. Didn't get it. I didn't get that for early access. I got it for all the other stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think the silly thing is that Blizzard will like, with my experience of working with a sales team and sales department, my guess would be they apportioned part of the revenue from like all the upgraded editions to, like, they would set aside a certain percentage as like, this is what we're applying the value of the early access to as part of those packages, to then present the argument that, like, here's how much money selling early access made. Whereas, like, for me, the value of that was $0, because it did not factor into my decision to upgrade or not. It was all the other stuff. So, like, it was just a fancy bonus that for me, like, it was just considered added value, which is typically done as 0. But they could, say, oh, well, we value this at $10. $10 of the, collector edition or whatever bundle is assigned as a line item to early access. So then they can turn around and say, like, yeah, we made oodles and noodles of money for early access specifically, so this is something that we should continue doing in the future. Which is why, unfortunately, like, if nobody bought the early access specifically, I think they would still go forward with doing this in the future, unless community backlash is big enough. I don't know. Now, that said, this expansion is a whole lot of fun. Controversies aside, yeah, I'm having a great time. They made the game a lot more friendly to solo players, because, like, I'm in a guild, right? I've been in the same guild that I was in since I started playing in 2007. The problem is most of the people in the guild are not playing anymore. So basically, I treat the game like I'm a solo player. So follower dungeons are a new thing. So this is similar to systems that they have in Final Fantasy XIV, where you go in, you solo queue for a dungeon, and you queue it up as a follower dungeon. And then what the game does is it gives you a bunch of NPCs that fill in the roles of the other party members for you. And you just, unfortunately, the difficulty, I guess it's intended to be like a story mode, easy mode kind of thing. So, like, you just typically steamroll your way through it. But it's a way to be able to experience a dungeon, kind of learn some of the dungeon's mechanics, and at least complete it for story purposes. Because, Warcraft has a tendency to do this thing where, like, you play through the quest line of an area and it culminates with a dungeon. So in the past, like, you had to find a bunch of other people just to do that dungeon so that you could get rid of the quest in your quest log, or not do the quest at all. But they would often put, like, a piece of desirable gear as a quest reward for that, or a bunch of, like, currency or something. In addition to follower dungeons, there are also delves, which are intended to be are intended to be a scaling sort of 1 to 5 player experience. That is usually like a much shorter little dungeon that has, like, quirky mechanics tied to it. So it kind of has some elements of Torghast for folks that have played Shadowlands. And it's kind of got some elements of like the island expeditions from Battle for Azeroth, and like other sort of or scenarios that they introduced in, like, Pandaria, I think. Either Pandaria or Cataclysm. Where those were like 1 to 3 player experiences. that could scale up. And you get NPC companions, and delves have a scaling difficulty that you can do, and you get better and better gear as you do it. So, and delves will be included as a way. So there's this mechanic called the Great Vault, which is intended as a way to you do certain tasks, like you complete certain content, usually raids, dungeons, and it used to be PvP. The PvP portion has been replaced with delves. So as a way to give solo players a way to get access to sign up kind of mythic dungeon or raid level gear. Which I think that's great. You know? Like for me, you know, I don't necessarily have the time to put in to do mythic dungeons and raids. Like I don't have that time. It takes forever. Like, because unless, you know, because like I don't have a guild group where we can get really good and just like, you know, learn the various mechanics of the mythic dungeons and everything, and then like just go through and try and get our fastest time. Like I don't have that time. Now delves can be completed in like 15 minutes. That I do have time for. And so being able to do this content and then also be able to progress as the expansion goes on is really great. I can't speak much for environment design as I'm only 2 out of the 4 zones in. As I reached level 76 out of 80 before leaving the first zone. But, you know, the zones are Isle of Dorn, which is sort of the island that you land on as part of the expansion. It's populated with Earthen, who are dwarves made out of stone, and are sort of construct-like. I mean, Isle of Dorn, great. You know, it's got sort of a sort of Highland vibe to it. And color palette is good. You know, that's what I can speak to. I love the greens that they used for it. It's nice to see just like normal landscapes after doing like, you know, Burning Crusade and Legion, and Wrath of the Lich King. Like the past couple of expansions have had a lot of really like absolutely out there color palettes due to magical energies or being in otherworldly realms and stuff. And it was nice to see just like, okay. Very big focus on like earth elemental type things. So there's a lot of like stone colors, but also a lot of like kind of muted greens. And that's just nice. It's nice to just like go and sit and hang out for a bit. And then the second zone is subterranean. And like the goal of the expansion is you go further and further down into the world. Which I think is a neat progression of like where you go. Instead of like you're going across the world in different locations. Like we're just going down further and further. So you know, I always love the trope of like, you know, an underground biomes. Particularly like if you're going to do like underground forests and stuff, is I think ecologically that's a very interesting way of how does this work. Like how do these plants get their nutrients? But then of course I have yet to get to the 2 more interesting zones too. One of which is just spiders everywhere, and then the other one is like has a giant like day-night crystal type thing going on, and underground airships, which it's great. So, and then improve functionality with like all of your characters. So the warband stuff is in the game. So it's basically all of your characters are connected now. So any progress that you make with like reputations or currency or whatever, you can share amongst all of your characters. And you get like a special bank to do it instead of having to, you know, make a guild with just your character, like with just your characters, and share a guild bank, which you could still do. So to get even more bank slots for storage. But yeah, it's great. I'm having a good time. Delves are great. So yeah, The War Within, out now. So that is going to wrap things up for this episode of the 8-Bit Adventures podcast. I hope you all have enjoyed listening or watching. Big shout out and thank you to all the folks who support this. If you would like to see more content from 8-Bit Adventures, be sure to check out our website at 8-bitadventures.com. If you'd like to help support that content, the best way to do so is to become a patron, not through iOS. You can do that at patreon.com/8bitadventures. Patrons, you can support for as little as $1 a month. Especially since I believe the price of Twitch subs is going up yet again. So, if you want to support, become a patron. And you just get charged once monthly. It's not per post or anything like that. And our opening theme is One Up by Professor Shy Guy. You can find his stuff over at professorshyguy.bandcamp.com. And shout out and thank you to all of the patrons who currently keep this content going. Thank you for your continued support. Thank you for listeners. Thank you for watchers. You can also support, by the way, just, leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, or if you're watching on YouTube, like subscribe, all that call to action nonsense. So with that, we're done. So we'll see you next week. And as always, have fun, happy gaming, and enjoy your pie cake.